I'm Jason Sachs, and welcome to Who the Hell Is This Guy? I'll be talking about your and my favorite silvery superhero, Moon Knight. Moon Knight is one of those characters in comics history who's always kind of been a second rater. A guy who has a small cult of fans who love him and a large group of fans who are kind of indifferent to him. But at his base is a pretty intriguing character with a pretty intriguing backstory. So sit back and listen to the long and winding tale of Mark Spector and Jake Lockley and Stephen Grant, but I digress. Moon Knight was introduced in the pages of Werewolf by Night, number 32, August 1975. Co-created by writer Doug Mensch and artist Don Perlin, Mooney was a bad guy in an attention-getting silver costume. Silver bullets kill werewolves, remember? Working for a mysterious conspiracy organization called The Committee to capture the titular wolf and bring him to them for nefarious purposes. But Mooney repents of his life of servitude and lets the werewolf go. In that story, we learn Mooney's origin as a kind of freelance servant of the Egyptian god Khonshu, as well as his buddy Frenchie the mercenary turned helicopter pilot. Now firmly entrenched as a hero after the two-parter, Mooney quickly appeared in another two-part 1976 tryout in the sampler comic Marvel Spotlight. Again by Mensch and Perlin, we get to know more about our hero, including meeting his girlfriend Marlene, and the most interesting part of early Moon Knight stories. Mooney didn't just have one identity, namely Stephen Grant, former mercenary turned hero at the demand of Khonshu. No, he actually had two more identities. Jake Lockley, the taxi driver, was able to drive around New York City unnoticed and learn about criminal activity, while the dashing Mark Spector was a Bruce Wayne type who playboyed around New York and the world, rubbing shoulders with the less reputable members of the upper crust. In 1980, Moon Knight matriculated his way to his own series. By now joined by budding superstar Bill Sienkiewicz, this series soon became a fan favorite for the moody art from the budding comics master and stories by Mensch that strayed far from superhero cliches. It's a great series, available in two epic editions, and features fantastic art by folks like Sienkiewicz, Kevin Nowlan, and Bo Hampton. I own a page of Kevin Nowlan art from this Moon Knight run, by the way, and I love it. Alas, that series ended by 1984. In 85, Moon Knight was revived for a 6-issue series subtitled Fist of Khonshu by long-forgotten writer Ellen Zelenetz and artist Chris Warner, which has a retired Moon Knight put the costume back on as a kind of religious pilgrimage to Egypt. It's a pretty good series and a quick read. By 1987's West Coast Avengers number 21, Mooney was established as a wacko, where he happily held on to a roster spot for a few years. By now, more a conventional superhero than the dark, mysterious Avengers, it was nevertheless fun to see our hero hanging out with a new group of friends. Through issue 41, when John Byrne succeeded Steve Englehart as writer of the West Coasters, Englehart wrote Moon Knight out of the series. But hey, this was never a character who let ostracism keep him down. The same year, he got his next series. Mark Spector Moon Knight isn't very well remembered these days, but it's solid Chuck Dixon superhero comics. Well worth pulling from the quarter bin for a few giggles. The winter issues of this run, by the way, and I love these issues, are the handful at the end of the 60-issue run, drawn by the inimitable Stephen Platt, who was like 18 or 20 at the time, fresh out of school and like amazed that he could even get a job in comics. They're like Rob Liefeld on steroids. It's freaking incredible. If you're curious, look for the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube episode about Platt, where they can show more incredible evidence of the era. It's so good. At the end of that run, Spector dies, but of course, comics, and by 1988, Khonshu revived Mooney for a miniseries by Mensch, followed next year by another Mensch helm four-parter. 98 mini has actually really lovely art by Tommy Lee Edwards, and the 99 version has nice work by Mark Texeira, well recommended if you like Tex's art. Which brings us to the kind of birth of the modern Moon Knight. In 2006, novelist Charlie Hudson revived Moon Knight again with art choice by David Finch. It was a solid action-adventure-based comic that updated Spector as a Gulf War vet. A Reddit poster captured the spirit really well, saying, "What if you're the coolest dude in the room, a badass inventor, pilot, weaponsmith, hand-to-hand combatant, and brilliant Wall Street manipulator with a badass girl on your arm and surrounded by people who adore and worship you, yet you are ultimately the villain in your own story." Pretty intriguing, right? The series plays up Spector's mental illness, sometimes in cringy ways. Finch's grotesque art is kind of oddly charming. It's not the greatest series, but, if you can find it cheap, it's worth looking for anyway. I'm going to skip over a couple of revivals of Moon Knight in his own series. Yeah, you can see he's one of these kind of second raters. But, I think my favorite version is the Marvel Now version of MK that started in 2014. Warren Ellis sets up one of the coolest comics of the era with tremendously inventive art by Declan Shalvey. Then Brian Wood and Cullen Bunn set up MK as the ultra cool Mr. Knight, who's a freelance consultant to the police and possibly a deeply mentally ill man. I love these comics. They are really entertaining comics, and they were standalone, done in one issues, have marvelously creative artwork in them, some really interesting ways that mental illness is depicted. 2016 run by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood. There's a really intriguing look at the dissociative identity disorder Mark Spector was dealing with. I really enjoyed how Lemire and Smallwood put us inside Spector's head, forcing us to see the world through broken eyes and a deep feeling of unreality. That's a run that's really worth a read. Sticks in my mind actually pretty often as one of the best Moon Knight runs ever. Which brings us to this newest Moon Knight series as I produce this video. That's the latest reincarnation of Moon Knight, this time written by Jed MacKay and illustrated by Alessandro Cappuccio. This version sets Moon Knight as a protector of innocent people attacked by the supernatural as part of his midnight mission. He's a driven but compromised hero, in therapy with Dr. Andrea Sturman, hanging out with his new friends Soldiers and Reese, and old fellow Avenger Tigra as he defends his neighborhood against zombies, vampires, and other oddball enemies. It also sets Moon Knight in a friendly conflict with Hunter's Moon. Moon is another servant of the Egyptian god Khonshu, a warrior who traces his lineage back for generations and who memorably describes himself as the other fist of Khonshu. So, not only has Moon Knight died 3 times so far, once at the hands of Khonshu in Egypt, once at the bottom of the East River, and once when the Shadow Heap, his headquarters, was blown up around him, but death number 4 is happening the week I'm publishing this project. That's no spoiler. It's right there on the cover of his comic, and hey, what better time to celebrate the long and complex life of one of Marvel's oddest heroes than when he's about to die again. January 2024 brings us the vengeance of Moon Knight, and the silvery cowl will be handed to Hunter's Moon. But my money is on yet another resurrection for Moon Knight, because you can't keep a good caped crusader down. Oh yeah, and there was a TV show about Moon Knight, wasn't there? You might have heard of it.